NHAI's first TOT, or the Toll Operate Transfer model, won by Macquarie, the Mumbai-Pune Hyperloop project, or the Japanese investment in the bullet train project. What's making Indian infrastructure investments attractive for foreign players? Let's discuss the impact of that with Danny Alexander, Vice President and Corporate Secretary at Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Danny, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Quint. You've been focusing on the investment story. You've been invested in India. You've invested about $1 billion here in India. Something like the Bangalore Metro, for instance. What's been your experience so far, and why are you bullish about the infrastructure story in India?
Well, since the AIIB was founded and started work in 2016, we've invested, as you say, about $1 billion, a little more than $1 billion in India. We have another $1 billion or more in the pipeline for this year. We've found very good quality projects. We have found a system that is bringing forward more and more good infrastructure projects. Some of the examples you mentioned also show the changes you've seen in India in recent years. The better, more predictable regulatory systems, the increasing focus on PPP as a solution for some kinds of projects, but also some of the financial innovation that's going on in India to bring more private sector money into the infrastructure space. We're at the moment, for example, considering involving ourselves in the proposed National Infrastructure Investment Fund.
The NIIF.
The NIIF, which is a very innovative idea. There are other financial innovations too. So I think India is a good place to invest in infrastructure. Of course, like every country, there are challenges, to do with project implementation.
What would those challenges be? I ask because the infrastructure story in India, while everybody talks about the potential, has been ridden with last mile challenges, issues of execution. What have you seen specifically?
Well, as I said, the AIIB is a new multilateral institution. So at the moment, we've invested in projects. Those projects are currently in process. None have been completed as yet. So we don't have that experience from our own kind of projects. But you see, not just in India, but in other countries around Asia, issues about project implementation, issues about land acquisition for infrastructure projects, which are very large scale often, issues about local regulations. Obviously, as an international multilateral financial institution, we have very high standards in terms of environmental and social safeguards. Sometimes implementing those things also takes a little bit of time. But in general, we find, looking across Asia, India is a very good place to do business. We see a strong pipeline of projects coming forward, which are helping to power the Indian economy forward.
We're talking at a time, Danny, when the first sort of TOT model for highways in particular has gotten extremely good response, and it looks like many stakeholders are happy with the solution. Do you believe that from a policy framework standpoint that India is moving the right direction as far as attracting investments is concerned?
Well, it certainly seems that way, and in a sense the proof of the pudding is in the eating. If investors are coming forward for these projects, then something has obviously been done right in the way they're being constructed. And I think in India now you're seeing more interest in different kinds of PPP, public-private partnership models for different sectors, not just highways but for water and other sectors too. We're looking at the moment at investing in the Mumbai Metro, for example, which is a massive investment in this city where we are at the moment. We'll be potentially investing in the Line 4 project there, which is sponsored by the state government, but where, as an investor, we can get involved in supporting that project. And so, we see more of those models coming forward, and that's a good way to attract more private sector investment. As you look around Asia, the infrastructure financing gap is so huge that the resources that come from international institutions like ourselves, or the World Bank, or the Asian Development Bank, or the resources from governments, those are far too little on their own to fund all the infrastructure that's needed. That's why bringing more private capital into infrastructure is so key. It's actually one of the issues that the AIIB will be focusing on in our annual meeting, which is here in Mumbai in June, when the finance ministers from our 84 member countries will come together, really to look at, as an institution, how can we help to bring more private capital into infrastructure, not just here in India, but across the whole of Asia.
When we talk about infrastructure investments, the comparison with China is inevitable, purely because the size of the infrastructure projects there, and also the rapid pace at which they've sort of implemented it. You're at a vantage point where you're funding projects both in India and China. What's working in China, and where do you think India lags behind?
Well, we're funding much more in India than in China,
although
as
you're
it happens.
sponsored by
Although we're located in Beijing, China and India are the two largest shareholders in the AIIB. China's experience over the last 40 years has been one that's seen a lot of successful projects implemented, as well as, I guess, they've learned from some mistakes. I suppose the political systems are very different between China and India, but I think that what India is doing now with the stable regulatory frameworks, with innovative financing models like PPPs, for example, will help to ensure that India can deliver more and more successful infrastructure projects in the year to come. And the experience, not just of China, but maybe of Korea also, shows that a real investment focus in infrastructure can bring substantial economic development benefits. That's why the AIIB was set up, to help share some of those lessons around many countries in Asia.
Daniel Alexander, many thanks indeed for joining us with your views.
Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed.